Hey, I believe it's time to fire elderly, worthless workers like you who have been in the same job for a long time. I'll discuss it with the superiors. You see, I can easily get you fired because I'm linked to one of the executives. With his demeanor, the man in front of me was obviously making fun of me and looking down on me. There was little chance that he would change his mind and begin to work hard. It's painful to crush the future of young people, but it's also for the sake of the company. Isn't that a coincidence then? That's exactly what I was thinking. I grinned when I said that. What lesson should I give him? Just considering it. My name is Dan Williams. Even though I'm getting close to 70, I don't want to fall behind the younger generation. I take regular walks to maintain my health, and I constantly try to use my iPad to remain up to date on new knowledge. As a result, I have very good health check results and am in wonderful form for my hobby of golf. The performance of the stationery business I started from scratch is respectable, and it has a number of popular products. I'd appreciate all of the staff members' efforts in making this possible. In addition to playing golf, I also enjoy pulling tiny practical jokes on those around me. Naturally, it's just small things that can bring joy to others, nothing that would really cause problems. I try to limit it because my son, the vice president, or my secretary chastise me if I go too far. Seeing people's shocked expressions makes me happy. I enjoy making them smile as well. Employee satisfaction is crucial, and that's what I want. At the moment, I simply undertake tasks like checking and stamping. I leave the majority of the business to my son, who is practically an executive today. Although generational change is required, I don't want to lose to the younger generation. Given the age range that our company's products are intended for, we ought to inject some youthful vitality. I'd assign the work to my kid, and as for me, I'm trying to make the workplace more pleasant. A nice environment is the foundation of good work. I put on a mask, adjust my glasses, and cover my somewhat lonely head with a wig. No one will realize I'm the president if I clean like that. I'd occasionally pose as a temporary employee in order to watch the staff. I'm glad to see everyone working with passion and earnestness. I'm going to the sales department today to conduct an inspection. With my chic spectacles and mixed gray hair wig, I look like a totally different person. What exciting things will occur this time, I wonder. However, the inspection is the primary goal. As I make my way to the office, I'm thrilled. I'd already explained the situation to the head of the sales department. My hobby is well known within the company, and it seems they are nervously anticipating when I will visit their department. However, I have no intention of quitting. It seems I've become a good spice, so it's fine. My seat is near the farthest door, so to speak. It's the lower seat. They always prepare it for me. As soon as I take my seat, the young person next to me greets me. Are you Dan? I'm Smith. Nice to meet you. The young man with a calm tone greeted me politely, even though I was supposedly a temporary worker. Yes, nice to meet you too. I returned the greeting, and Smith proceeded to explain the tasks to me. His explanations were concise and easy to understand, and he asked several times if there were any unclear points. I had a gut feeling that this young man was competent. Good morning. At that moment, an unenthusiastic voice came from the door, and a young man with bright hair entered lazily. He sat down heavily in the seat in front of Smith and stretched his body while letting out a big sigh. Good morning, Dan. This is Johnson. We joined the company at the same time, but Who's this old guy? A temp worker. I'm the ace of the sales team, so don't hold me back. I was taken aback by his haughty attitude, but Johnson, the young man, didn't seem to care about his surroundings and yawned loudly. Johnson's uncle is apparently one of the company's executives, and he's highly regarded for the future. Smith responded with a wry smile. While I didn't say it aloud, it was apparent that he was one of those employees who had gotten in through connections. I decided to observe quietly without changing my expression. Johnson's work habits turned out to be worse than I had anticipated. He spent very little time at his desk, often goofing off elsewhere. I spotted him reading magazines at the nearby convenience store or lingering in a coffee shop for extended periods. Sometimes, he even napped or played games in an unused meeting room. But that wasn't all. He would often delegate his tasks to Smith and claim credit for the results with a casual attitude. Well, Smith would just smile wryly and say, "It's the usual." If this was the usual, it was certainly a problem. Feeling the need to offer some candid advice, I pretended to have business elsewhere and made my way toward where Johnson was slacking off today. The first conference room was vacant. As I pretended to tidy up, I attempted to open the door, but it was locked. However, being the president, I had the master key. I gently unlocked the door, being careful not to make any noise. Inside, I found Johnson lying across several chairs. He was considerate enough to wear an eye mask and appeared to be sound asleep. Around him, there were scattered game consoles, smartphones, and comic books, making it abundantly clear what he had been up to. Wondering how to rouse him as he snored loudly with his mouth wide open, I decided to start by calling out to him. "Johnson, please wake up." However, he showed no signs of waking up. I sighed inwardly and took a balloon out of my pocket. I had it on hand just in case I ever needed to surprise someone. I extended a clip I happened to have in my pocket and poked the balloon. With a loud PA, the balloon burst, startling Johnson awake. "Whatty?" "Good morning, Johnson," I said with a smile. He seemed momentarily bewildered, but quickly returned to his usual smirking expression. "What's up, temp guy? You scared me for nothing." Ignoring his attempt to go back to sleep, I asked, "What about work? Don't we have a big deal coming up soon?" "That's fine. If you leave it to Smith, he's insanely diligent, like a total workaholic. Even if I don't do anything, he'll handle everything and even go out of his way to make sure the other side isn't inconvenienced. I'm not cut out for the dull stuff like making documents. It's all about finding the right fit, so I leave the complicated explanations to him. My job is just to keep the other party in a good mood. If I smile and butter them up, they won't feel bad, and my stock goes up, right? I just need to perform well on the actual day. The steady day-to-day work is for the others. Well, that's the way it is. So it seems he's not particularly helpful during business negotiations or presentations. He simply accompanies them. I wondered if his boss had noticed this, but I denied it. These types are good at putting on a facade. They act arrogantly towards colleagues or those they consider beneath them, while acting servile and ingratiating towards superiors and business partners. It's easy to imagine. In fact, until I saw it with my own eyes, there hadn't been any reports of issues with his work attitude. Johnson showed no sign of moving and seemed content to go back to sleep on the chairs he had set up. "I'm still going to nap. Can you clean up another room? Don't make noise, okay. Aren't you going back to work?" "What, old man? You're giving me orders? You're just a temp, you know. Unbelievable." He laughed heartily as if mocking me. "My uncle is an executive in this company. You, on the other hand, can be fired easily. Get it? I see you. At your age, being a temp and a low-level employee is just ridiculous. You're an old man and incompetent, right? You can't be talking down to a guy like me. There's a big difference between you and me." I felt a slight irritation at his continuous mocking attitude, but I held back. Taking advantage of my silence, he didn't stop. "You know, I think it would be better to fire useless old-timers like you who have been regular employees forever. I'll talk to someone about it. Since I'm related to an executive, it's easy to get you fired. Your future is in my hands. Remember that. Don't forget it. Okay." The man in front of me looked down on me completely, ridiculing and laughing. With his attitude, it seemed unlikely that he would change his ways and start working diligently. It's painful to crush a young person's future, but I also have to think about the company's interests. How coincidental. I felt the same way. I said with a smile, how should I punish him? That's all I thought about. Got it. Then get out. Oh, and don't bother telling anyone anything. It's useless. I'll fire you right away. Your future is in my hands. Remember that. Don't forget it. Okay. Saying that, I left him there laughing and exited the conference room. In my mind, I was preoccupied with thoughts of how to punish him. The big business deal was about getting a well-known nationwide general store to prominently feature our new products. Our main target audience was young women. The products had a simple design with a variety of colors that could be easily decorated to align with the latest trends. We also offered a range of items like pencil cases, pens, binders, and scissors in the same lineup, all at affordable prices that high school and college students could easily afford. Smith was the one carrying several samples in a large box and loading them into the company car. There was still no sign of Johnson, who was supposed to go with us. I decided to approach Smith and offer to help with the sample transportation. Oh, I'm sorry about that. No problem at all. My boss told me to accompany him for the luggage. Such things weren't explicitly said, but they say lying can sometimes be necessary. I can always tell the sales department manager later. As I contemplated this, Johnson arrived, a little past our planned departure time. Johnson had a neat appearance, and if he just stayed quiet, he might have looked like a competent salesman. Well, in sales, you can't afford to stay silent. Johnson lightly greeted us, and without apologizing for being late, went straight to the back seat and began fiddling with his smartphone. Smith, who seemed accustomed to this, didn't say anything and just got into the driver's seat. I took the front passenger seat, and we headed to the major general store's office. Hey, old man, if you're here, do I really have to go? Why don't you two go by yourselves? I'll wait here. After parking the car in the lot, Johnson suddenly started saying such things, lying down in the back seat and taking out a game console from his bag to play. We told the other side that both Johnson and I would go, didn't we? Quit your whining. Just tell them something like our substitute employee is here due to a sudden illness. I don't really like the receptionist over there. Didn't you talk to her the last time we went? Did I do that? Well, I'm not going. Just handle it however you want. I don't get why people put so much effort into their work. Johnson said that and continued playing his game, ignoring any attempts at conversation. Smith let out a sigh as if he had given up and said, "Let's go," urging me to walk with him. With a large box in my arms, I followed him. The president of this company is an old friend of mine, and I've visited the company several times before. Well, as they say, the receptionist seemed to recognize me and hardly stood up, but I gestured with my eyes for her to sit back down and remain silent. She turned pale and nodded. Smith, observing this, seemed somewhat puzzled but stayed silent as the representative from the company arrived. Dan, is it? No, it's nothing. Smith appeared to be a perceptive guy with his ability to read the atmosphere. Smith's negotiations went very smoothly, and we were able to successfully conclude the contract. When we returned to the car, Johnson was still playing with his game console. Smith knocked on the car window and called out to him. Johnson didn't seem to mind much and simply raised his head. It went smoothly, didn't it? Well, yes, it did, but... Oh, old man, don't tell anyone that I didn't go for the negotiation. If you don't want to get fired, you understand, right? Ending up on the streets at your age would be the worst. Laughing like that, Johnson seemed to be completely making fun of us. I've witnessed decisive moments of him slacking off at work, and I can gather testimonies too. I've decided to call him in tomorrow. The next day, I called Smith and Johnson to the president's office through the head of the sales department. Of course, today, I was wearing a neatly tailored suit, ditching the wig I usually wear when performing my president duties. I couldn't help but look forward to their reactions when they saw my real appearance. With a smirk on my face, I waited. Then there was a knock on the door, and the three of them entered the room. "Hey there, welcome," I said with a smile. But Johnson's attitude didn't seem to change much from usual. It seemed he hadn't realized my true identity. Smith, perhaps feeling nervous or uneasy, furrowed his brows, and the department head appeared bewildered, as if wondering why he had been summoned. "I received a report that a significant deal was closed yesterday. I heard that you two worked hard on it, and I wanted to express my gratitude." Upon hearing this, the expressions of the three of them brightened, as if a weight had been lifted off their shoulders. It was no wonder. I hardly ever called someone into my office and said something like this. They had never heard of such a thing before. Johnson stepped forward and said, "Your kind words are much appreciated. I've been preparing for this contract for days." I sensed fear in his smile, a reaction he couldn't hide. Without noticing my demeanor, Johnson continued to speak. "Smith can't do anything unless I tell him to. It's like he has instruction-dependent syndrome or something. So I took the lead and came up with various ideas." Johnson spoke to me while using his gaze to hold Smith in check. The department head, appearing puzzled, just watched him and didn't say anything. Watching their dynamic, I sighed and spoke. "I see. Actually, we received an inquiry from the other company. Who was the one who explained during the negotiations?" "That would be me." Johnson raised his hand eagerly. "But I also heard that there was someone who stayed in the car and played games." "Oh, that's this guy. I told him to behave and listen to me, but he didn't," Johnson said, pushing the blame onto Smith. With a sigh, I felt like I was getting a glimpse of his true character. It seemed this guy really only thought about himself. Is that so? Smith, I thought you were a very diligent person." "Manager, this guy here is just pretending to be serious. I'm always the one cleaning up after him." "No, that's not true." Smith tried to deny it, but fell silent under Johnson's glare. He must have been feeling threatened with his job on the line. However, it seemed a bit too timid for him. As the president, I thought I should steer the conversation. "I've heard of it. There's someone who occasionally takes naps in the conference room or lingers at the coffee shop or convenience store, inconveniencing our employees. I thought something needed to be done. That's him." Johnson pointed at Smith. Smith hung his head in resignation and clenched his fists. "That's strange. Smith has always reported his whereabouts properly, and there shouldn't be any instances of him disappearing like that." "Huh. Even when I was in the sales department, Smith seemed to be working diligently, and it didn't look like he had time to slack off." At my words, Johnson's eyes widened. "Wait, why was the president in the sales department?" Seeing Johnson tilt his head in confusion, I gave him a cheerful smile. "You still don't get it. Look." I said this as I put on the white-haired wig. Of course, this was what I had worn when I infiltrated the sales department. Then I changed my glasses, and Johnson's face turned pale. "What? It's the temp worker, isn't it?" Johnson shouted. "Johnson, please refrain from shouting," the department head interrupted and advised him. Johnson covered his mouth with both hands. Sure enough, even he, as expected, seemed to have realized that he was in the wrong. It was only natural, considering how many lies he had told. "Yes, I am that temp worker." Johnson seemed not to have noticed because he still had hair. "Our CEO is." "I won't tolerate any more of that." Well, Johnson seemed not to have noticed, but Smith understood my true identity. Hesitantly, Smith spoke up. "Yes, because you seem to be hiding your identity, I didn't say anything." I nodded at his words. Indeed, it seemed that Smith was quite talented. He could read the room, unlike some others. When I looked in Johnson's direction, he turned pale, his mouth opening and closing, as if trying to come up with an excuse. but everything was being observed. He must have realized that making excuses would be futile. Now then, Johnson, you can fire me at any time, right? Because your uncle is an executive, are you guaranteed a promotion? It's strange. In our company, we can't dismiss anyone without my approval, and being someone's relative shouldn't guarantee a promotion. Well, your uncle is an executive, isn't he? We should also have a chat with him. Oh, cats. I stood up and opened the door to the adjacent room, which served as a continuation of the current room. Inside were my son, who was the executive director, and the man who was Johnson's uncle. Johnson, what on earth had you done? Yes, I introduced you when you were job hunting. But that's it. I can't meddle in personnel matters, and we agreed at work that we're just strangers to each other. Using my name to threaten colleagues? That's completely out of line. As soon as he burst into the room after opening the door, his uncle scolded him fiercely. Already, Johnson had tears in his eyes. Johnson, do you have anything to say for yourself? I've been observing you closely these past few days. Everything you said earlier was a lie, wasn't it? The successful preparation and execution of our business negotiations were thanks to Smith. On the contrary, it was you who slacked off. The claims of Smith passing off work to others and slacking off were also lies. You're the one doing that, right? Saying this slowly and deliberately, Johnson slumped to his knees. He had some self-awareness of his wrongdoings, but he must have thought he could just shift the blame onto others. His way of thinking was utterly flawed. Before working on rectifying his character, what should be done first? I need to talk to the other people involved. Now then, Director, can't you manage your subordinates properly? You should have noticed what Johnson was up to if you were keeping an eye on things. Smith taking on an excessive workload. Did you never think of investigating it? Yes, you're absolutely right. You probably noticed that Smith was taking on an excessive workload as well, didn't you? Why didn't you investigate? Yes, it's all my fault. I thought as long as the work was getting done, it was fine. Understanding your subordinates' job responsibilities is also an important task for a supervisor. You should reflect on this as well. I'll inform you of your punishment later. Don't worry, it won't involve demotion. I'm looking forward to your future performance. Yes, I am very sorry. The manager apologized sincerely. Taking responsibility was part of the job for a supervisor. It meant that if you allowed your subordinates a degree of freedom, there would be corresponding responsibilities. The manager himself was no longer young, but he had been fortunate with his subordinates until now. He had never thought that a situation like this, where he had to take responsibility, would arise. Then, I turned to Smith and said, "Your dedication to your work is truly admirable, Smith. However, if you keep taking on others' burdens like this, you'll eventually burn yourself out. Don't hesitate to ask for help when you need it. That's what you should reflect on this time. Enduring everything is not a virtue. Remember that." "Yes, thank you," Smith replied, looking at me with determination. His eyes were filled with resolve, and I believed that he would continue to do his job well. Sales department, I want each of you to bring in a detailed account of your job responsibilities. Well, actually, this applies to the entire company. Check if anyone is shouldering an uneven workload or if any employees are pushing themselves too hard. We'll investigate this from now on. I said this, and my son, who was the executive vice president, nodded and began giving instructions to others. Now, Johnson, I haven't given you a lecture yet. Starting from tomorrow, you'll be my direct subordinate. I want you to assist me with various tasks. The president's direct subordinate? Seriously, that's a promotion. Johnson's downcast expression suddenly transformed into a bright smile. However, I dropped a bombshell at this moment. Well, starting tomorrow, I won't be the president anymore. Those present, except for the executive vice president, widened their eyes in surprise. I hadn't announced this within the company yet, but I wanted to see their expressions. Seeing their surprised faces, even at this moment, I was satisfied. I'll be stepping down from the position of president starting tomorrow. I'll be a rehired employee. Johnson, as my direct subordinate, I want you to work on improving the working environment within the company. Improving the working environment? Like cleaning, managing supplies, and stuff. I'd like you to start by cleaning the small garden next to the entrance tomorrow. I'm counting on you. Oh, by the way, let's make your salary performance-based. The more effort you put in, the more you earn. Really? Seriously? Johnson had started repeating the same words over and over. Well, the idea that the more effort you put in, the more you can earn also means that if you slack off, you won't make a dime. Starting tomorrow, I had decided to stand by his side and thoroughly reform his character. After a while, following the re-evaluation of our company's operations, we started hearing that the workplace had become even more comfortable. It seemed that Smith, without Johnson taking credit for his achievements, was rapidly making a name for himself. He was the top employee in terms of performance, and there were times when other companies specifically requested Smith for sales. I secretly hoped that with his talents, he could become my son's right-hand man. Since stepping down as president, I could now focus on my longtime hobby, observing the company from within. Occasionally, I discovered problems and quietly conveyed them to the responsible parties or worked to resolve them. It was like being an investigator within the company, and I found it enjoyable. According to Johnson, despite initially thinking he might dislike tasks like cleaning and weeding, he surprisingly performed them diligently. He seemed to find it refreshing and enjoyable to witness visible improvements as things became cleaner. He had never done any cleaning when he was growing up, having been pampered since childhood. But when he tried it as part of his job, he apparently had a knack for it. With his relatively straightforward personality, I thought that with a combination of rewards and punishments, he might also become a capable individual. Today, it was time to tend to the small garden in front of the entrance. I would replant and prune the flowers beautifully with each season, delighting the eyes of those who visited the company. Taking care of these flowers was almost like a hobby for me, and since some people looked forward to seeing what kind of flowers would bloom, I put quite a bit of effort into it. Former president, I'm exhausted. I might even get heat stroke. Oh my, is it that time already? I tend to lose track of time when I'm deeply engrossed in something, so I'm truly grateful when Johnson says things like this. My son, who has become the president of the company, and my family, in general, seem to appreciate that he unconsciously takes care of my health. Let's take a short break here, Johnson. Take a look at my hands. Saying this, I produced a piece of saltwater taffy out of my seemingly empty hand. It's a simple sleight of hand, but he reacts dramatically with amazement, which makes it fun for me too. Well, former president, your hands are magical. I find his laughter dazzling. The words he once used, putting the right person in the right place, come to mind. Now, while Johnson may not have been entirely willing to work under me, seeing him enjoy his work like this, I can't help but think it might have been for the best. If he had stayed in sales, it might have turned into a tough situation later on. Within the framework of a company, everyone has a role to play. Fulfilling those roles properly is essential as a working professional. To ensure that all employees work happily, those on the management side must continue to make efforts as well. After all, human resources are invaluable,